News.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. The Richard Spring Fire raging on in southeastern Montana. Tonight, the towns of Ashland and Lame Deer remain under evacuation as more than a dozen secondary structures have now been lost and nearly 170,000 acres burned. And many residents are still fearing the worst as the Lame Deer fire now looks to converge with the Richard Spring Fire. The Lame Deer fire, which started Tuesday, has burned just under 4,000 acres and is 0% contained at last report, while the Richard Spring Fire now sits at 165,000 acres burned. Highway 212 is closed between Crow Agency and Broadus and is closed to all non-residents between Ashland and Lame Deer. Highway 39 is currently open, but officials warn that could change at any time. Nearly 200 firefighters are fighting those flames tonight from the ground and from the air. Well, the American Red Cross has shelters set up for the fire. Volunteers took care of about 150 people last night. Q2's David J. has more from Busby.
We're here at the Northern Cheyenne Tribal Schools, where the American Red Cross has a shelter set up. We talked with one of the workers about what it's like to take care of people here and how important it is and how challenging and demanding a job it can be.
The schedule is 24 hours and you kind of get a little bit of sleep here and there, but it's rewarding for me because I know that I'm making a difference for somebody that is frightened, confused, just plain scared.
Sherilyn Hamilton is a disaster program specialist and says she first became acquainted with the American Red Cross when she needed help on her land, on her property out in Musselshell County for a fire several years ago.
That was my first introduction to American Red Cross. They helped my husband and me. And after a few years, I thought, I kind of like to volunteer with them. And I have 5 years now.
She says for the American Red Cross, this fire is now a disaster relief operation.
It has been declared so we can bring in national resources and more resources to this area for us to assist evacuees and clients.
Northern Cheyenne tribal members are also helping with the evacuations and pre-evacuations.
It is a big thing for us to make sure that our loved ones and everybody is taken care of. All of the people that are playing a part. A big thank you, and just keep us in your prayers.
The most important thing that I can say to them, it's going to be okay.
In Busby, David J., MTN News.
Well, the Red Cross had more shelters, but now has two in Busby and Crow Agency. Ed joining us now with a first look at weather, and we've been hit by a double whammy this year, sweltering heat and that lack of rain.
That's right, and it's all added up into a lot of drought across the state. Let's go ahead and take a look at where we were. This as is of September 1st of last year, and we had some dry areas and a few patches of moderate drought, a little bit some more severe situation around Sheridan. As we take it ahead into the early spring, things started off okay. Western Montana really wasn't seeing much in impacts. But then all of a sudden we were up to extreme drought by May into eastern Montana, and that's now continued to spread out to the point where at this point all of Montana and northern Wyoming is in some form of drought. That doesn't happen very often, but what does this all translate back into? We think about drought and how it affects agriculture, but it can affect all of us. And I had a chance to sit down recently with our own Andrea Lutz and talk about exactly what that means to all of us.
Water is a precious commodity, but right now Montana isn't rich with it.
This could go on for a long time. Some of the levels of drought that we're seeing right now, we haven't seen for quite some time.
But what does being in a drought really mean?
We're seeing what are called D4 levels of drought, which might come up once or twice in a century.
A once-in-a-century drought, that could have lasting impacts beyond summer.
I think sometimes we just associate drought with hot weather and a dry period, but a drought can go right on through the winter as well.
The National Weather Service says some 857,000 people are affected by drought in Montana, and June of 2021 was the second driest on record over the past 127 years. When we hear statistics like this or see maps of different shades of red, we might wonder, how does this impact me?
If we know there's a hailstorm coming, we know what the effects can be. It's short, it's quick, we know, okay, maybe we got to get a new roof or got to get the dings out of the car. If it floods, we know that we could get mold in the basement. But drought, really what are we going to be affected with?
Ed says you'll end up feeling it at the grocery store.
There aren't any strawberries at the store. And, you know, it's harder to buy a ground of beef. It's a lot more expensive. And supply and demand starts to be affected.
Already this summer, at least 6 major cities in our state have phased in water restrictions, telling residents to cut back on non-essential water use.
Then we could see effects for recreation. Hunting and fishing. All of a sudden there's stress on fish, there's stress on wildlife.
Being in a drought severely impacts our farmers and ranchers. That we know. But sometimes it's hard to see the effects of drought in your daily life.
If you think back to the pandemic and all the gyms shut down, and at first it really didn't affect me all that much, but later on I started putting on extra weight and it was a lot harder getting up and down the stairs. That would be like the end of the meteorological drought. But the effects for me, I'm still carrying around those extra pounds and it's still getting up and down the stairs that are a problem.
As Ed explains, a drought impacts us all, even when we can't tell right away.
Even if it starts raining tomorrow, we're still going to feel the effects for quite some time.
In Billings, Andrea Lutz, MTN News.
And the last time Montana was in exceptional drought was in the early 2000s. That was considered a D4 drought level, like you heard Ed explain there. That was the longest drought on record, lasting some 300 weeks. Well, yesterday we looked at a change in the law that gives Republican Governor Greg Gianforte broader power to appoint judges to fill vacancies in the state judiciary. The governor and legislative Republicans said the change was needed, in part because the old system, it helped Democratic governors pack the courts with liberal judges. Today, in the second part of our two-part series, MTN chief political reporter Mike Dennison examines who the former governor appointed to the bench.
Governor Gianforte says trial lawyers in Montana greatly influenced the old process to get their colleagues appointed as judges. I spoke with Al Smith, the executive director of the Montana Trial Lawyers Association, who said that 20 years ago, the group did begin encouraging members to apply for appointment to open judgeships, partly because it felt Montana's judiciary had become overweighted with former prosecutors.
We just felt that it would be good to get people that have experience in civil cases, that can work efficiently, know how to run a courtroom.
Trial lawyers generally represent people who've been injured or wronged in accidents or by corporations or government. MTN News examined the background of Bullock's 28 judicial appointments. 9 of them were members of the Trial Lawyers Association at the time of their appointment. But Bullock also appointed 8 judges who'd worked as prosecutors, at least 6 who were public defenders or did criminal defense work, and 9 who'd worked in various types of civil law.
There were individuals that I believed had the background, no matter what that background had been, to give everybody that came before them a fair hearing. And I think that's what Montanans expect out of the judiciary.
He also appointed the first openly gay district judge in Montana and 12 women to the bench.
Because Governor Bullock had the opportunity to appoint so many people, he also had an opportunity to kind of increase the diversification. There's kind of a better balance, I guess, male and female. Individuals who come before the court want a judge who looks like them and who understands their life and their perspective and their hardships.
Almost all of his appointees have been reelected, too. And half the state's judiciary got on the bench through election to begin with, without appointment by any governor. But are Bullock's appointees liberal judges? District Judge John Brown of Bozeman chaired the Judicial Nomination Commission when it vetted and chose the finalists for Bullock's last 14 judicial appointments.
And the kind of questions we asked the candidates had nothing to do about politics. We're concerned about about their temperament. Did they have a general understanding of the law? Were they willing to assume the obligations of being a district court judge? Because it's a hard job.
Smith of the Trial Lawyers says while his group's members generally support Democrats in the political sphere, those labels often don't apply to the job of judge.
Very often see flips between what are perceived to be conservative and liberal justices, and it's really not. It's just that that's how they view the law that's in front of them that they're reviewing.
Bullock says he thinks GOP criticisms of the judiciary are the real political gambit to undermine an independent branch of government that could stall parts of their agenda.
And it should be telling that right after the session's over, the Republican Party is actually sending out mailers attacking the judiciary. I think this may be as much about unconstitutional bills that the legislature passed, then it really is a statement on the fairness of the judiciary.
On that point, I guess we'll find out what judges and the Supreme Court think of those laws when they issue their rulings, regardless of whether those judges were elected, appointed, or who appointed them. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
And you can see a full list of Montana State judges and how they got on the bench on our website, ktvq.com. The Boulder Arrowhead All-Stars representing Montana in the Little League Northwest Regional Tournament, hoping to make a little history tonight. They could clinch a spot in the Little League World Series, but they had to get past a tough Washington team first. We'll pick it up in the second inning. Eli Jones, the Washington pitcher, helps himself with the hit here. But watch the throw to the plate. They look to have the runner, but Walter Steinbach doing a little dance somehow avoids the tag. And the boys from Billings are down 1-0 at that point. Scary moment here in the third. Smash right back at Billings pitcher Kieran Ballard, drills him in the chest. Ballard was down. Fortunately, he was not out. He was okay, but he was a little shaken, it looked like. The wild pitch here. Washington tacks on 4 to go up 6-0. And they're going for more right here. But watch Drew Hygas. This is a great throw for Billings. Nails the runner at the plate. Billings still down, though. 6-0 at that point. They have to rally. Carson Mangle, blooper here. This would fall. Billings comes back, cuts it to 6-2. But things don't get any closer tonight. A tough loss, 10-4, the final. Well, the result did not dampen the mood of the Magic City faithful. Take a look at the scene tonight at Buffalo Wild Wings in Billings, packed with fans cheering on the All-Stars. Hard to find a seat. Same story Monday night when Boulder Arrowhead beat Idaho. And they'll do it again one more time tomorrow night at Buffalo Wild Wings. Another watch party scheduled for 7 o'clock for the game against Oregon. Again, not all is lost as tomorrow's winner still heads to the championship of the region and locks up one of the 2 spots for a trip to the Little League World Series in Williamsport. And you can read tonight's full game summary in Scott's story right now on montanasports.com. Well, still ahead on the MTN 10 o'clock news here on Q2, we look back on the life of Montana artist Bill Raines, whose works of art will live on in Billings and beyond. Plus, building from the ground up, a single mom who has overcome a lot of challenges thrown her way, sees her dreams become reality. That story coming up in just a bit.